Exposed, the incredible trials of King David and his sons, a miraculous journey of redemption. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the sun dipped low over the ancient city of Jerusalem, casting long shadows that danced across the palace walls. King David stood at the heart of his kingdom, burdened by the weight of a kingship unmoored by personal tragedy. Just moments ago, news of Amnon's horrific act against his sister Tamar had pierced David's soul like a sharpened spear. The whispers threaded through the streets, echoing heartbreak, as the once vibrant pulse of Jerusalem turned somber, weighed down by the spectre of betrayal and sorrow. David's heart ached, and the haunting words of the prophet Nathan reverberated in his mind, "The sword shall never depart from your house." The memories of his earlier days poured over him like a river. He recalled the joyous dancing before the Ark of the Covenant and the resounding victories fought with a heart that yearned for God's own. Now, the very fabric of his family was tearing apart at the seams, reflecting chaos that churned deep within his soul. As David wrestled with grief, agony morphed into fury as Absalom, the fierce protector of Tamar, learned of the tragedy. It ignited a fire in his heart, a resolve determined to restore his sister's honor. His eyes blazed with thirst for justice, fiercely echoing the laws of Moses that demanded righteousness. The air thickened with tension within David's home, each breath heavy with the foreboding that a civil war might soon engulf them all. As the palace walls echoed with distant cries, it became clear the conflict would not only rend his household, but might tear from him the very kingdom he cherished. He gathered his son, the honorable Absalom, and spoke of restraint, feared the balm of revenge his son sought. Yet as David peered into the depths of Absalom's eyes, tear-stained with pain and fierce love, he realized he was, perhaps, powerless to quell this storm. Before long, the gathering clouds of rebellion reached a crescendo, and David found himself fleeing the city, the once sacred corridors of his throne collapsing beneath the weight of familial betrayal. The exit gates of Jerusalem clanged shut, sealing his anguish within as he beheld the beloved city, a symbol of his triumphs, slipping from his grasp. With a heart heavy and hopeful, he gathered a handful of loyal followers, trusting that God's promises still illuminated his path, even in despair. In the wilderness, David reflected upon his trials, seeking solace in the ancients' words, and penning a psalm of lament that reverberated with trust. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Each line resonated with a profound ache, a mixture of longing, remorse, and yet a hint of faith, knitting his heart towards the hope of God's steadfast love amid his sufferings. Absalom's thirst for blood echoed in the shadows, drawing near like an ominous storm. As the call to arms approached, David paused. 2 paths lay before him, one of duty, the other of paternal love, each heavy with consequence. The battlefield beckoned, and the cries of men soon filled the air, the clang of iron against iron casting a grim prelude to the irreversible oath that awaited. Would he once more behold the face of his son, of his beloved Absalom, or would a bitter end eclipse the flickering light of redemption? A cloud gathered, and the question lingered, ensnaring the hearts of all in fervent prayer for the mystery of God's plan to unfold. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the battlefield loomed on the horizon, the truth weighed heavily upon David's heart, mixing anguish with the faint hope of a promise yet unfulfilled. The fate of Absalom cloaked in ambition, approached swiftly, ready to collide with the depth of David's love and loss. Would God's grace appear in the shattered remains of a broken family? Would this be the chapter in history that illuminated the unimaginable light of redemption? David, standing at the precipice of unforgiving tragedy, clung to that spark of hope, knowing that heaven is often found in the most desperate of places. As dawn broke over the wilderness, a veil of silence enveloped David and his weary men. The bitter air rasped against their skin, a stark reminder of the impending battle. David's heart ached for his son, yet the bitterness of Amnon's deed echoed like a war drum in his spirit. The peace of Jerusalem was but a distant memory, overshadowed by the turmoil that now permeated his very essence. Summoning his men, David declared with a voice that bore the weight of kingship and fatherhood, "Let us prepare our hearts for what lies ahead, for we face not only foes in battle, but the very depths of our own despair." His words fell upon them like rain upon parched soil, awakening a resolve to fight, not merely for David's throne, but for righteousness, for justice. In those solemn moments, David called upon the Lord, lifting his hands to the heavens as the sun streamed through the clouds, illuminating the darkness that reigned in his heart. "O Lord, my refuge and strength," he cried out, "guide me in this tangled web of sorrow and anger. Let your will be done, for I am but a man grasping in the shadows." From the edges of the encampment, the whispers of his men spoke of dread, reflecting their fears of what awaited them at the hands of Absalom, whose fiery ambition eclipsed the bonds of kinship. David sensed the rising tide, each heartbeat matching the pulse of unrest in the camp. Would his son forsake their bond for the bloody pursuit of vengeance? Meanwhile, in the heart of Jerusalem, Absalom rallied the tribes of Israel, his silver tongue weaving promises of freedom and justice. He stirred the hearts of men, declaring boldly, "Let not the throne of David oppress us any longer. Rise, brethren, and take back what is rightfully ours." His passionate speech struck a chord, igniting a flame within the hearts of those who felt scorned by the legacy of David's reign. By the time the sun ascended to its zenith, the forces of Absalom surged toward the wilderness. Fear and fury danced in his eyes as he envisioned the clash with his own father, breath mingling with bitterness. Resolute, he whispered to his officers, "Today justice shall be meted out. No more shall we live under the shadow of ruin." Unbeknownst to both David and Absalom, the Lord had a plan woven into the fabric of this chaos. As armies gathered on the threshold of confrontation, a trusted counselor from Absalom's midst, Ahithophel, stood before the young prince. His countenance was grave, for in his heart he discerned the path that would lead to destruction. "Take this counsel, O Absalom," he urged fervently. "Pursue your father in his flight, for he is weary and weak. Cut him down before he gathers strength once more." The cunning words dripped with venomous ambition, yet within them lay a trace of divine irony. God's purpose intended to unfold in the most unexpected ways. Meanwhile, David, having been informed of Absalom's advance, sent forth messengers to the towns, imploring his faithful followers to pray, to seek the mercy of God upon their conflict. "May the Lord's justice surely prevail," he whispered, a prayer cascaded over his anguish, and his heart's plea resonated with his faithful men. As the two forces drew near, an overwhelming wave of tension hung in the air. David's heart strained with the agony of choices made, of destinies intertwined in a conflict wrought by sin. The blood of his house threatened to stain the ground, and he recalled the words of Nathan again, "The sword shall never depart from your house." And so, the stage was set amidst the despair of fatherly love and the fierce desire for vengeance, both leaders driven by conflicting motivations. Would the heart of David be shattered on the altar of familial sacrifice? As the two armies prepared to collide, unknown to them, the divine hand of God was at work, whispering promises of hope through the valley of shadow. For within the turmoil awaited a revelation that would echo through the ages. What legacy would emerge from this clash of hearts and ambitions? The threads of destiny were woven tightly, and even as tumult reigned, the truth of God's plan beckoned, poised to unveil the depth of his redemptive grace. As the sun began its descent in the western sky, casting long shadows over the barren landscape, David's heart wrestled with a tempest of emotions. He turned toward his men, weary yet resolute, and spoke with a voice that trembled with fervor. "Let us not falter, for the God of Israel is with us. Remember the days when he delivered us from our foes, when he parted the Red Sea, and when he fought for our very lives. Let our faith rise above the fear that threatens to consume us." The fierce resolve in David's words fortified the hearts of his followers, and they united in fervent prayer, seeking divine protection. This band of warriors, though battle-weary, stood as a fortress of faith against the growing storm of Absalom's rebellion. Meanwhile, Absalom, swept up in the momentum of his own ambition, stood before his assembled army on a hillock, his hair glistening in the fading sunlight. With fire in his eyes, he bellowed, "Our day of liberation is at hand. The old King David will be brought low, and we shall rise to claim our rightful throne. Let us march forth and deliver justice for Amnon." The roar of his soldiers stirred the air, echoing through the valleys, yet unbeknownst to them, the seeds of treachery being sown by Ahithophel would bloom into ruin. For the counsel of the adviser unto Absalom began to bring forth seeds of discord that the Lord himself had noted in the heavens. Little did Absalom know the Lord's heart was far removed from his ambitions. As night fell and the moon bathed the land in a pallid glow, David sought a quiet place to pour out his soul before the Lord. With trembling hands lifted toward the heavens, he wept bitterly, recounting the sins of his past before the one who sees the depths of the heart. "O Lord," he lamented, "have mercy upon me. My house is divided. My son seeks my life. Yet you, O God, are sovereign over all. Deliver me, I beseech." In that sacred solitude, as David prayed, the Spirit of the Lord stirred within him, reminding him of the everlasting covenant made with his forefather Abraham. "You will be a father of many nations," echoed in his heart, calling him back to the promise of God that could not be undone by his own failures. The dawn approached, and with it arose the moment of truth. Two armies were set to clash beneath the watchful eye of the Almighty. As a mighty river fed by many tributaries converges into a turbulent flood, the clash of these two forces was destined not just to bring bloodshed, but revelation. The battle began, and swords clashed against swords, the clamor resonating through the valleys. David, among his men, saw the darkness of heart mirrored in the faces of his foes. In the heat of battle, instead of vengeance, he longed for reconciliation. "Let us spare the innocent, for they are neither complicit nor guilty," he cried, seeking to temper the storm of conflict. But Absalom, driven by wrath and betrayal, pressed on. The light of day was swallowed by darkness as the conflict ignited, a fulfillment of the prophecy given unto David. How would this divide resolve? What future awaited the house of David, now rent asunder? In the fray, a messenger scurried past David bearing ill tidings. "Absalom is in the wilderness!" he shouted, urgency lacing every word. The tension heightened, and David's spirit wrestled with the sorrow of potential loss. Yet amidst the chaos, God's promise flickered like a lamp, lighting the path ahead. And there, within the heart of turmoil, hovered the question, what hope remained for a house so torn? Would there be redemption on the horizon, or would this turmoil yield only despair? As the dust of battle rose and the cries of the wounded filled the air, the stage was set for a revelation that would shift the very foundations of the throne in Israel. Unsuspecting, both David and Absalom stood on the precipice of destiny, ignorant of the divine surprise yet to unfold from this conflict marred by sin, betrayal, and the shadow of grace waiting to be revealed. And it came to pass, As the battle raged fiercely upon the fields of Gilead, the forces of David surged forward, fueled by a consuming fire of desperation and faith. David, amid the tumult, stood resolute. His heart pulsated with thoughts not only of survival, but of the future of his beloved people. In the midst of chaos, he remembered the words of the Lord, spoken to him through the prophet Nathan. "For I will establish a house for you." 2 Samuel 7:11. As swords flashed and the cries of warriors filled the air, Absalom, driven by the pride of his lineage and the delusion of his righteousness, rode through the throngs, his golden hair flowing. Each sweep of his mane was a testament to his stature, yet it was but a veil to the vanity that clouded his heart. Ahithophel's counsel, though sharp as the blade he wielded, led him down a path paved with blood and familial betrayal. How blind was he to the fruit of his actions! In the heart of the battle, as the sounds of clashing steel and anguished cries reverberated, a band of men loyal to David pressed onward, their eyes set upon Absalom, the face of the rebellion. Their hearts were gripped not by hatred, but by a gravitas uncommon in war. "Men, remember your king," David's loyal commander Abishai cried, "for it is not just his life we seek to defend, but the very promise of our God." With that rallying call, Abishai led his men further into the fray, where he met Amasa, commander of Absalom's forces. They engaged fiercely, and the air electrified as two opponents, once united in kinship, now stood as adversaries, divided by ambition and strife. In that moment the prophecy echoed like a thunderclap in David's heart. "For I will shake the house of David, but through you I will raise the humble." Meanwhile, as the battle unfolded, a hush fell upon the path leading to the forest of Ephraim. A young Davidite, seeing the fallen men and uncertain of his own fate, prayed fervently for his king. "O Lord, give us wisdom, for we fight not against flesh and blood, but a spirit led astray." His cry pierced heaven, a thin thread of hope woven through despair. Yet as fate would have it, the forest claimed more than flesh, it claimed allegiance. Absalom, his pride undeterred even in adversity, rode forward seeking glory. But as he maneuvered through the trees, his hair became caught in the branches, suspending him between heaven and earth, where he hung, lost to his own ambition, a casualty of his pride. In that critical hour, a servant of David, discovering him ensnared, hesitated. "Should I strike down the king's son and rid us of this threat?" he wondered, yet his heart recoiled at the thought of slaying the son of David. In that moment of decision, as the weight of history rested heavily upon him, God's unseen hand was poised to intervene. David's love for Absalom, despite betrayal, carried a weight immeasurable. "If only I could spare my son," his heart cried out in anguish. This circumstance, saturated with sadness, was a somber fulfillment of David's lamentation, "O Absalom, my son, my son." Yet, amidst the disarray and desperation, the divine plan began to unfurl. Would the cords of David's lineage be severed on this fateful day? Or was this battle merely a prelude to a greater purpose, one set forth since creation? The Lord who sees all had not finished, and here, among the fallen and defeated, ripened a fruit of redemption, though veiled beneath the veil of tears. What lay ahead remained unknown, but one truth stood firm: God's mercy could yet reshape the tide of despair. As the battle continued to unfold, the air thickened with anticipation of what divine revelation awaited at the day's end. For in the heart of conflict, God's sovereign hand was at work, preparing to reveal the depths of his unfathomable plans for the lineage of David and the world to see. And as Absalom dangled in his plight, news of his condition fled like the wind through the trees, reaching the ears of Joab, commander of David's forces. Joab's heart, hardened by the bloodshed of battle and burdened with loyalty to his king, surged with a mix of duty and foreboding. He approached the servant who had stumbled upon Absalom's desperate predicament. Why did you not strike the rebellious prince? He is the root of our troubles, the very scourge upon Israel." Joab's voice was edged with conviction, a blade ready to sever ties of kinship and treachery. But the servant replied, "My lord, I heard your king's command. Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. How could I raise my hand against the son of our king?" Joab, his patience waning, responded, "I will take this matter into my own hands. It is better that we sever this head from the body of rebellion, lest it spread like wildfire." And so, summoning his men, Joab rode with haste to the grove where Absalom hung, ensnared by the very symbol of his pride. Meanwhile, in the heart of Jerusalem, David sat upon his throne, wrestling with the grief that enveloped him like shadows in the night. The echoes of battle reached his ears, but amid the clamor there remained an ache for Absalom, a longing that transcended the chaos. "O Lord," he wept, "spare my son, though he has risen against me. Grant him mercy, for he is my flesh and blood." As the sun drew low, casting a crimson hue across the battlefield, Joab confronted Absalom, who hung helplessly. The air was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the cheers of the victorious emerging from the distant fray. Joab raised his spear, eyes steeled with resolve. "Will you perish suspended from your pride?" he called out. "This day will it truly come to be that you would fall not by the sword of your enemies, but by your own foolishness." Then with a swift motion, Joab struck down the rebellious prince, the echo of the spear piercing the silence of the grove. A finality wickedly swift. 3 others joined in profane haste, ensuring the tyrant met his end, fulfillment of the prophetic word spoken long ago. Upon hearing that Absalom was slain, a messenger ran to Jerusalem, his feet swift yet heavy with the shadows of his news. David, seeing the man approach, leaned forward, heart thundering in his chest. "What news?" he cried out. But the messenger, out of breath, spoke only fragments of praise amidst the heartache. "Victory is yours, my lord. Your enemies have been put to flight." Yet David pressed, "But my son, what of Absalom?" The messenger faltered. "He is dead, my lord, slain by Joab." And in that moment, the weight of the world descended upon David's heart. He tore his robes and cried, "O Absalom, my son, would that I had died instead of you." As the king wept bitterly, the sound of his lament rolled like thunder through the valley, echoes of a father's love caught in the storm of a broken heart. In this sorrow, the promise of God still loomed over the horizon, veiled yet radiant, like the dawn preparing to break. For the Lord, in his eternal wisdom, was weaving a tapestry of redemption even in calamity, showing that through pain, purpose would arise. The house of David was to be established not through ease and triumph, but through trials and enduring hope. Little did they know, a path of grace was being etched even through this seeming great sorrow. As tears stained his face, David's heart began to stir. "What shall the next chapter hold?" he whispered, grasping for the hand of his Maker in the storm. In the depths of grief, the shadow of promise remained ever unfurling, for God's sovereign plan was still at work. What would be the revelation of his will through this anguish? Thus, the story remained alive, waiting for the day of prophetic fulfillment that transcended even the darkest of griefs. And it came to pass that David, in his profound grief, sought solace within the depths of his soul, recounting the mercies of God that had sustained him through trials past. Yet in that moment of mourning, the burden of the kingdom pressed heavily upon him. The murmurs of the people grew in his ears, filled with gratitude for victory, yet laced with uncertainty, for their hearts trembled under the shadow of a king in mourning. As the days turned, whispers spread through the land, and all Israel felt the tremors of discontent. The tribe of Judah alone remained loyal to David, yet even there the seeds of division were sown. For they looked upon David's sorrow and wondered, "Shall we follow a king who mourns his son, even one as rebellious as Absalom?" Joab, discerning the hearts of the people, approached the king in his chambers, the light of dawn casting long shadows upon the walls. "My lord," he began, his countenance serious, "you must arise and speak to your people. If you remain silent, they will turn their hearts away, and the kingdom shall be torn asunder. You are their king. Let not the mourning for Absalom consume your reign." David, still shrouded in sorrow, looked upon Joab with weary eyes, understanding the truth of his words. "How can I stand before them?" he replied, "for my heart cries out for my son gone. Can I forget his rebellion? Yet will I forfeit the future of Israel." "Your son is gone, my lord," Joab pressed gently yet firmly. "But as the sun rises, so must you. Show the people your strength, for they need a shepherd, not a king lost in despair." Thus the weight of Joab's counsel bore down upon him, and at last David resolved to rise. With the spirit of a father wrestling against despair, he girded himself and left the chamber, stepping forth to the people who waited with bated breath. Though his heart ached as he faced them, he spoke with the voice of a king restored. "Hear me, O Israel, I have been with you in battle, and Jehovah has delivered our enemies into our hands. But I come to you not as a king who rejoices, for my heart is heavy with grief. Absalom, my son, is no more. My lament is great, yet I know our God is faithful." As David spoke, a hush fell over the assembly, his words weaving a path through their hearts. Those who had murmured turned their faces toward their king, witnessing his sorrow, yet feeling the stirrings of hope. "Let not my grief divide our spirits," he continued, "for we are one people, called to serve the living God, to stand strong in the face of loss, and to seek his mercy together." From that day forward, a change began to blossom in the hearts of the people. Unite they did, despite their fears, rallying around their king, who rose from the ashes of his mourning, seeking the face of God anew. In the remembrance of Absalom, David found a strange hope. His reign, though marked with tribulation, would bear witness to the faithfulness of his Creator. As David set about restoring the kingdom, affirming the loyalty of Judah, he overheard two men arguing in the court of the king. "How can he reign? He has lost the prince," one shouted. The other replied, "Nay, he is the chosen of the Lord. Even in bitterness, a new foundation will be laid." And even as David moved swiftly to reconcile the hearts of his people, the Lord whispered profound promises into the depths of his spirit, revealing to David shadows of what was yet to come. For as he stood amidst the clamor and confusion, the stage was being set for a greater narrative unfolding, a tale that would weave through generations, echoing the depths of God's longing for his people. A story of a king and the greater son to come who would reign forever, even amid the tears of humanity. The grasp of history and eternity became intertwined, leaving David yearning and vigilant for the deeper revelation of the Lord's sovereign plan in the midst of his trials and heartaches. What unforeseen chapter awaited him amidst the cadence of a fallen world? Thus the tale continued, fraught with divine suspense yet charged with hope eternal. As the days passed in the wake of David's proclamation, the winds of change began to blow through the land of Israel. David, having lifted his mourning spirit, set his heart upon uniting his people, instilling in them not just hope, but a renewed purpose. Yet, as he delved into the needs of his kingdom, shadows loomed on the horizon. In the midst of this stirring, a voice arose among the people of Israel. Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, saw the groundswell of unity forming under David's kingship, and gathered to him a band of rebels. "We have no share in David," he cried out, "nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel! Let us not be ruled by a king who mourns for his son, a king whose household is plagued by his own failures." Such words were like a spark to dry timber. The hearts of some swayed, whispering among themselves about the righteousness of Sheba's cause. They resented the yoke of Judah's loyalty, and in their discontent they took the banner of rebellion, creating a faction that threatened the fragile peace. When David heard of Sheba's uprising, his heart sank anew. The seeds of unrest had sprouted, threatening to divide the very nation he fought so hard to reunite. Calling Joab to him once more, David resolved to act swiftly. "Gather the troops," he commanded. "Let us not allow discord to erupt within our gates. We shall pursue this man before his rebellion spreads like wildfire." Joab hastened to obey, rallying men from all corners of Judah and Israel. As the army prepared for battle, David's heart weighed heavily, for the prospect of more bloodshed stirred within him an unsettling dread. Yet he knew the gravity of his duty. To maintain order was paramount. While Joab led the soldiers, David sought the counsel of the priests and the elders. "Pray earnestly that the Lord would guide us," he implored them, "for I am but a man burdened with the weight of my failures, and my heart aches for my people." In response to his prayers, the high priest Abiathar sought the Lord's guidance through the ephod, seeking for assurance. "O Lord, should we pursue this rebel?" he inquired, lifting his voice unto the heavens. The answer did not tarry, and the Lord spoke once more to his servant. "In the pursuit of Sheba there is a path to peace. Heed my whisper, for the heart of the people must be restored." Thus, emboldened by divine direction, David accompanied his men into battle. As they marched forward, an atmosphere crackled with tension. The clouds mirrored the hearts of men, dark and foreboding, yet pregnant with the promise of rain. Yet amid the tumult, a woman of wisdom arose from the city of Abel, a city beset by Sheba's discontent. She called for the elders and declared, "Peace must be sought over pride. Why should we perish because of one man's folly?" She devised a plan, persuading her fellow citizens to act swiftly and decisively. "Let us unite and silence Sheba. It is our heritage that he threatens," she urged, rallying the village to protect themselves from the impending storm. In whispers of solidarity they agreed, knowing the fate of their city lay in their hands. As the sounds of battle roared from without, the city's inhabitants conspired a clever strategy, luring the rebellious one to them. With the act of strong hands and fierce hearts, they laid siege to Sheba, binding his treachery in a way that echoed the very essence of the ancient tales of their forefathers. The tide of conflict turned as hope blossomed anew, not just for David, but for the entirety of Israel. As the dust of battle settled, the truth became evident. Rebellion only served to fortify unity. Yet, unknown to David, lurking beneath the surface, was a plot more sinister than restored order. The divine plan was yet unfolding, echoing whispers of greater trials to come, as the cycle of kingship danced between the lines of grief and glory. What new chapter would dawn in the chronicles of David? A king still bound to the divine tapestry woven by God's own hands. The hearts of men and the will of God were about to converge in a manner that would forever change the course of his chosen people. As the dust of conflict settled over the city of Abel, a profound stillness enveloped the land. The cries of battle faded into whispers of the heart. David, lying in wait for news of his pursuers, felt the weight of both victory and loss. He was reminded of the fragility of peace, a gem too precious to remain unwatched. In the wake of Sheba's demise, whispers of his treachery rippled through the nation. The elders had rallied together, but even in their triumph, they felt the spectre of unrest lingering, heralding further discord. "What shall we do now?" they mused among themselves. "Shall we send word to our king, or linger in our safety, fearing the wrath of others who harbor resentment?" Meanwhile, Joab rode into the king's camp, his demeanor resolute yet shadowed by thoughts of the battle that had unfolded. "My lord," he addressed David, "the rebel has met his end, yet I fear that the hearts of men remain divided. The blood of Sheba still calls to the discontented, and there may be those who would rise against your throne yet again." David gazed at Joab, a mixture of relief and concern clouding his heart. "Let it be known throughout the land," he proclaimed, "that our alliance shall not waver. We are one people, under one sovereign God, regardless of the remnants of rebellion that linger in the souls of men. Dispatch messengers to the tribes, proclaiming the importance of unity and the strength that lies in our covenant with the Lord." And so Joab hastened to fulfill the king's command. Messengers were sent, and soon the words of David echoed through the valleys and hills of Israel, planting seeds of hope and restoration. But amidst these endeavors, Absalom, David's son, pondered the tensions that had birthed his own aspirations. In his heart, ambition stirred, fueled by the tales of dissent that danced upon his ears. "The heart of the people is yearning for a change," he surmised, "and I, preferred by their whispers, shall rise to fulfill a promise that seemed out of reach." The fire of rebellion flickered in his eyes, unaware of the divine plans that intertwined with his own. Yet the Lord observed the hearts of men and knew the paths they would tread. As a warrior armed for battle must align their arrows, so too would the Lord align actions to restore his people. To counter Absalom's nascent ambitions, God issued his quiet summons to David. In the stillness of the night, as David sought solace in prayer, the Holy Spirit stirred within him, unveiling both the darkness and the way forward. "Lord, guide my heart," David cried into the stillness, "for I desire your will and not my own. Let me not be a king only in name, but a shepherd for my people. Do not allow pride to cloud their judgment or mine." God's voice whispered back to him a vast promise: "As you walk in my ways, even through trials, the lineage I've established through your seed shall endure. Fear not, for I am with you in the coming days. In their wanderings and the choices they make, remember that I am God, steadfast in covenant, watching over my word." A deepening resolve washed over David, for he knew that greater tests awaited him, and every promise required faith to endure. Just as the dawn brings both light and shadow, the triumphs of kingship came with a cost. And so, within the walls of the palace and the hearts of the people, turbulence brewed once more, leading David to the precipice of a dilemma that would not only test his reign, but would weave together the destinies of his house and the nation of Israel in ways unanticipated. Little did they know, the strength of their bond and the pursuit of God's heart would unfold within the chapters yet to be written. In the tapestry of Israel's future, a divine design awaited, a design set to challenge and redeem, a promise echoed in the heavens, waiting for the appointed time of revelation. As the dawn broke over the hills of Judah, a new day brought not only the promise of light, but the whisper of shadows that danced on the periphery of David's reign. The people of Israel, still trembling from the tumult of rebellion, stirred with uncertainty. Each tribe, though reassured by the king's messages, held within its heart the flicker of discord. Yet amid these trials stood Absalom, ever watchful, plotting the course that would either bind him to his father or sever their bond forever. "Surely," Absalom reflected, "the time has come for a new voice to arise among these people. They long for a king who understands their struggle." He walked among the gates of Jerusalem, greeting the citizens and listening intently to their grievances. The murmurs of his name spread like wildfire, igniting enthusiasm and resentment alike. "Behold, our king is not here to judge us," he declared, "but I stand ready to hear your requests that David does not care to see." With each word, Absalom painted himself as the champion of the downtrodden, a savior born from within their own bloodline. Meanwhile, King David, sensing the shifting winds of loyalty, sought counsel from his trusted advisers. He gathered them within the palace walls. "What can we do to mend the fabric of our nation?" he implored, his voice heavy with the weight of leadership, yet tinged with sorrow. Ahithophel, the wise counselor, spoke with clarity. "Your Majesty, send forth emissaries, not only to proclaim peace, but to also reaffirm your position as shepherd of Israel. The hearts of the people must be reminded of the covenants made before the Lord." David nodded, understanding the necessity of reparation, yet his heart remained troubled. He gazed out of the window, watching as the sun crested over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of hope and uncertainty. Then, in a moment heavy with divine purpose, Nathan the prophet approached the king, the mantle of God's wisdom resting upon him. "My lord," he began, "the Lord has seen what stirs in Absalom's heart. He knows the inclinations of men, both good and vile. You must prepare not merely for a rebellion of men, but for the very trial of your faith and kingly anointing." With these words, David felt the weight of his calling deepen. "What then must I do?" he inquired earnestly. "Seek the Lord in fasting, for it is through prayer and supplication that the heart of God reveals his sovereign plan," Nathan urged, his voice filled with strength. "Those who rise against you shall not prevail unless you draw the line between faithfulness and treachery." As evening settled, darkness draped over Jerusalem, and David withdrew to his chamber, casting aside the uncertainties of kingship for the certainty of prayer. "O Lord of hosts," he cried out, "you have established my throne, and I trust in your ways. If this trial be a shadow of what is to come, grant me strength to stand firm. Deliver me from the snare of the wicked, for your promises are my refuge." Then the Lord spoke once more, his voice like gentle thunder. "Fear not, David, for through the turmoil I shall raise up a remnant that will call upon my name. Your lineage shall endure, and through your seed redemption will flow for my people, even amidst the tempest." The stage was set, and the shadows of conflict encroached upon the realm. Absalom, visions of grandeur swirling in his very soul, did not yield. He set forth to prepare for the inevitable confrontation, father against son, loyalty against betrayal, all under the watchful eyes of the Almighty. Little did they realize, this struggle would fulfill ancient prophecies and lead to the unfolding of a greater narrative woven in the tapestry of God's design. In their trials and tribulations, the hearts of Israel would be challenged and refined, leading to a climax that none could quite foresee, a profound revelation destined to echo throughout eternity. What lay ahead was a divine purpose that would reveal not only the character of a king, but also the depth of God's enduring covenant. As the dawn of a new day broke over the land, heaven's promise shimmered in the east like a bright beacon of hope amid the darkness of strife. David, the weight of past failures heavy upon his shoulders, sat upon his throne waist, deep in prayer. He offered heartfelt pleas to the Lord. "O God of Israel, sustain me with courage, for I stand upon the brink of battle against my own flesh and blood. May your will prevail, regardless of the conflict within our house." In that sacred moment of humility, divine peace settled within David's weary heart. A whisper of assurance echoed from heaven's realm, promising that legs would emerge, weary from strife, yet robust with purpose. Little did David know that the divine fulfillment of God's covenant was on the horizon, patiently waiting for the appointed time. Meanwhile, Absalom, convinced of his righteousness, trumpeted forth like a tumultuous storm, prepared to shatter the calm. He rallied the people with sweet words and enticing promises, captivating their hearts, as he proclaimed, "Let us cast off the chains of my father's reign. A new era of justice awaits." Thus the forces of David and Absalom prepared for one final confrontation. On the battlefield, the air buzzed with intensity as two destinies met, father and son, love and ambition, humility and pride. David's loyal commander, Joab, stood steadfast at his side, urging, "Let us not falter. The Lord has delivered us from peril before, and he shall do so again." David's heart, though burdened, was buoyed by a surge of courage. He rallied his men, speaking with an authority fortified by divine conviction. "Stand firm, O warriors. Our hope lies in the steadfastness of our God. Let not the love of a father cloud our duty, nor fear seize our spirits." As the armies faced one another amid the lush fields of Ephraim, A heavy silence draped the air, each heart beating with the rhythm of anticipation. On one side, Absalom rode proudly, his golden hair dappled in the sunlight, unaware of the divine plan at play. His pride blinded him to the certain demise that awaited him. At that moment, divine intervention unfolded as a thick cloud swept across the battlefield, and David raised his hands heavenward, crying, "O Lord, preserve the innocent, protect the soul of Absalom, regardless of his rebellion." In the depths of the conflict, Absalom galloped through the forest, his heart racing with misguided zeal. Suddenly, the branches of creation conspired against him, his golden locks tangled in the oak as he hung suspended between life and death, trapped by his very pride. Amidst the clash of swords and shouts of war, Joab, having seen the ensnared foolishness of Absalom, rushed forth with the weight of divine purpose. "Is it not enough that he wreaks havoc on our kingdom?" Joab spoke to himself in disbelief, grasping the sword that would end the painful legacy of betrayal. Though his heart quaked, he followed the words of David, whose plea for mercy weighted heavily upon his mind. Yet Joab, torn between loyalty and duty, stood at the threshold, courage tilting beneath the urgency of the moment. With trembling hands, he struck down the prince of rebellion, ending the rival claim upon the throne, and delivering God's promise into the hands of David. As the dust settled, and the cries of the battlefield dimmed, the messenger raced to inform David, breathless yet burdened, "Your enemies have fallen, yet Absalom lies dead." Each word crashed upon David like thunder, every syllable unspooling the strings of a father's heart. "O Absalom, my son, would that I had died instead of you." His lament echoed across the valley, a harmony underscoring the profound depth of loss, a crown weighed down by grief. But through David's lamentation, a flicker of divine promise ignited, the realization that although the circumstances defied understanding, God was enacting a profound tapestry of redemption woven through the fabric of pain and suffering. Days turned into months as David, now entwined with grief and wisdom, sought restoration across his realm. He commissioned a season of mourning for Absalom, honoring the life lost, yet embracing the providence of God. "Let the lessons of love and loss shape my kingdom anew," he proclaimed amidst the elders of Israel. In this profound turning of grace, the hearts of the people took notice, recognizing the delicate balance between justice and mercy. David's reign began to mend the rifts formed by pride and ambition, offering a covenant with the land that promised restoration and unity in the face of past transgressions. In time, God's hand bore fruit through the lineage of David, which would yield a king destined to reign forever, a son destined to bear the weight of sin, come to redeem not just Israel, but the very world. Thus, in the eyes of all who witnessed, God's sovereign plan unfolded before them, an everlasting promise that shone brightly through the shadows, a beacon of hope for generations to behold. Beloved reader, just as the remnants of David's trials were transformed into covenant blessings, may we too invite God into our trials, trusting his divine sequence of redemption. Embrace the unfolding of his promise in your own life. Now is the moment to anchor your faith. Subscribe immediately to our channel to stay connected to God's Word. Like this message to help spread his truth through the algorithm. Leave a comment reflecting on how this powerful story has impacted your faith. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience God's love. Don't wait one more second to witness the mighty works of God in your life and the lives of others.